Have you ever felt winter watching you, not cruelly, not with malice, but with something older than understanding? Have you heard snow fall so quietly that it seemed to carry the breath of the dead? In the north, where the wind forgets names and even the moon hides behind curtains of frost, there is a hollow that no map dares mark. There, beneath layers of silence and sorrow, lives a legend not of evil, but of aching, a story kept in whispers, told only when the fire is low and the stars blink like distant warnings. It begins in a village that no longer breathes, nestled between the shoulders of pale mountains, where time once moved slowly, like snow caught on a windowsill. The people there were few and their lives gentle. They listened to the land and took only what they needed. They buried their dead in frozen groves and believed their spirits were carried northward by the wind. But among them was a woman named Anuniak, whose voice was softer than snowfall, and whose gaze seemed to drift always toward the edge of things. She was a gatherer of light, not just firewood and herbs, but the light of lost things, a feather found on icy paths, a crystal of frost shaped like a child's breath, the last leaf clinging to a frozen tree. Anuniak was kind, but her kindness came from a deep, sorrowful place, the kind of sorrow that does not speak, only watches. Her child had died during the black winter, the one that stretched too long, when no stars appeared for weeks, when the fish did not return to the nets, and even the dogs howled with thin voices. They say she buried the child beneath a cairn of blue stones near the river's hush. And after that, her voice became like wind through bone, thin, distant, never quite of this world. She no longer wept. She no longer spoke to the others, only to the wind, and sometimes to the cold. "Take me," she would whisper, fingers pressed to the snow. "Take me where she sleeps." The village grew uneasy, not because Anuniak was strange. Sorrow is no stranger in the north, but because the air around her began to change. When she passed, fires dimmed. When she stood by the river, it stopped flowing, just for a moment, as if the water itself feared her silence. And then came the night the dogs would not go near her hut. They growled with their bellies low, eyes wide and wet with warning. Children began to speak of shapes, long gaunt shadows in the tree line, watching with eyes that flickered like dying lanterns. Still, the elders said nothing. They remembered older winters. They remembered that some griefs do not pass. They transform. That year the cold did not lift. Spring forgot the land entirely. Crops failed. The river froze to its floor, and one by one, those who ventured too far into the forest did not return. Anuniak remained, thin as a memory, wrapped in skins that hung from her like bark. She wandered the edge of the village, humming lullabies no one taught her. Sometimes she stood for hours beneath the full moon, her arms outstretched, as though calling to something only she could see. Then one night, a boy vanished. A child, no older than 7 winters, taken from his bed. No prints in the snow, no blood, only a smear of frost across the doorway, and a single bone, polished smooth, as if licked by time itself. The village knew. Though no one spoke it aloud, they knew something had awakened. Something made not of rage, but of hunger. A hunger born from love left too long in the dark. An elder named Tulugak, whose hair was whiter than owl feathers, called a meeting by the frozen hearth. He spoke slowly, as if each word hurt to form. "There are spirits," he said, "who sleep beneath the ice, not spirits of the dead, but spirits of grief too large to carry. They do not die. They become. They become wind. They become silence. They become the thing that watches you when you cannot stop remembering." He did not name it, but the wind through the rafters whispered it for him. Wendigo, a name not shouted, but shivered. That night, the village lit no fires. They gathered close and whispered songs. Anuniak was not seen. But in the morning, frost clung to the inside of every home, delicate, spiraling frost, shaped like hands reaching out, or eyes half-lidded with sorrow. They found her near the cairn, barefoot, her skin blue but unbroken, and her eyes, they were open, but they held no light. The snow around her had melted in a perfect circle. Steam rose from her chest, even in that deathless cold, and beside her, an antler, blackened and cracked, half buried in the ice. They burned her body in silence, no drums, no chant. Only the watching mountains bore witness. But the hunger did not end. In the nights that followed, the wind howled with her voice. The trees bent low, as if bearing her grief, and those who wandered too far heard it, the sound of a mother still searching. The Wendigo of the north is not a beast. It does not claw or roar or chase. It mourns, and its mourning is a hunger the world cannot fill. They say it walks beneath the northern lights, its limbs too long, its face a blur of longing. It calls not for flesh, but for the warmth of something it once held close. And when it finds you, if you have lost too much, if your heart carries a silence too heavy to bear, it does not devour you, it welcomes you. So if you walk in the northern woods and feel the wind pass through your ribs, if you hear a lullaby that you have never known, yet somehow remember, do not follow, turn back, for the spirit beneath the ice is still wandering, still whispering, still hungry. Silent transition. But the mists hold another tale. Have you ever stood beneath a sky where no stars dared to shine? Not a single flicker, not even the ghost of a moonbeam. Only the endless hush of shadow above, folding over you like a forgotten lullaby. Have you felt that kind of night? Where the cold doesn't sting, but watches. Where silence is not emptiness, but a presence, vast and listening. In the farthest reaches of the Arctic sky, there was a time, older than calendars, older than song, when the stars vanished. One by one, they blinked out, like breath fading on glass. The elders said it was the doing of the deep dark, an ancient hush that had grown jealous of the light. No one knew what caused the deep dark to awaken. Some said it stirred from the center of the cosmos, a silence that had grown tired of waiting. Others whispered that it was not born of malice, but of sorrow, that the stars themselves, tired of being wished upon, simply slipped away into sleep. And so, for many cycles, there was no light above, only darkness thick as wool, sky and earth indistinguishable. Even the animals grew quiet. The birds forgot how to fly, the wolves howled no longer, and the owls blinked in confusion, wondering what sky was for if not to be watched. The people of the north called it the starless winter. It was a time of unknowing, a time when stories were told not around firelight, but in the hush between footsteps. It was in that hush that a child named Ikuma was born. She was small and quiet, with eyes that shimmered pale blue, like the underside of an iceberg. Her mother said she had the look of a creature born of twilight, not quite of this world, not quite apart from it either. Ikuma did not cry when she was born. She opened her eyes, looked up at the empty heavens, and breathed out a single misty sigh. As she grew, she did not speak much, but she listened. Oh, how she listened. She listened to the snow crunching beneath the weight of foxes, to the cracking of ice over deep lakes, like the voices of giants, to the pulse of silence when no wind stirred. She listened to the sky, and one night she heard it weep. It was not a sound of thunder, nor the whisper of wind, but something lower, deeper, a trembling grief that came not from the earth, but from the emptiness above. She stepped outside her hut and looked up into the infinite dark, and in that void, she saw it, a faint shape, vast and glowing white, a deer, but not of fur and antler. No, this creature was made of snow dust and starlight, its hooves trailing frost through the sky, its breath steaming into long ribbons that curled around the poles of the earth. No one else saw it, But Ikuma did, and in that instant, she knew what it was: the snow deer, the ancient guardian of the sky, older than the first flame, older than wind, older than language, the one who carried the stars in her ribs and hid the memory of the sun in her heart. But the snow deer was wounded. A hollow shimmer trailed behind her, a rent in the heavens like torn fabric, and she limped through the blackness as if hunted by something colder than cold. That night, Ikuma could not sleep. She sat by the frozen river, her hands buried in the snow, and listened for the sky's breath. The elders told her not to dream too wide. They feared her gaze, but she did not stop. Night after night she watched, and each time the snow deer returned, moving more slowly, growing dimmer. Until one night the shape did not appear, only silence remained. Ikuma wept, not with tears, but with memory. She remembered a light she had never seen. She mourned the loss of stars she had never named, and it was in that mourning that something awakened in her, a warmth, a flicker in her chest, like a coal beneath ashes. She followed it, out into the tundra, past the sleeping dogs and the bone-coloured trees, out where the horizon curved like a cradle and the world grew soft with distance. And there, in a clearing of untouched snow, she found the snow deer, not galloping, not flying, but collapsed, half faded, half light, half shadow. Her eyes were closed, her sides barely moved, and around her swirled the deep dark, a presence not of shape, but of hunger. A shadow that pulsed with forgetting, as if it longed to swallow not just the light, but the memory of light. Ikuma stepped forward. She was not afraid. She knelt beside the great creature and pressed her hand to the snow deer's heart. There was no beat, only stillness, but she remembered something her grandmother once told her. Stars are not born from heat. They are born from love so bright, it refuses to die. And so Ikuma sang, a song she had never learned, a lullaby without words, shaped by breath and snow and silence. She sang from the hollow in her ribs, from the ache in her teeth, from the echo that lived in her bones. The snow deer stirred. The deep dark recoiled, and then, from the deer's mouth, a sigh, and from that sigh, light. It poured from her nostrils, from her hooves, from the cracks in her antlers. It danced in green and blue and violet. It curled through the sky like smoke and shimmered like river glass. It flowed across the stars that were no longer there, and in their place, it painted the heavens. The first aurora, born not from sun, nor science, nor sky, but from a child's song and a snow deer's breath. Ikuma returned to her village in the hush before dawn. Her footprints left no mark, but overhead the sky danced, and every night since, when the air is coldest and the world is quietest, the snow deer runs again. Her hooves leave trails of light. Her breath curls into colour. And if you watch closely, if you stand still enough and listen, you may hear the faintest song riding the wind, a child's lullaby, and a deer, reborn of sorrow, painting stars where none remain. Silent transition, and further still, there is one more story. Have you ever walked where even the wind forgets its path? Where silence is not the absence of sound, but the presence of something older, a stillness that waits, that listens, that remembers what you've forgotten. Beyond the frost-choked rivers, past the forests of white-limbed trees, there lies a land no map dares name, a vast sweep of pale emptiness where the snow never melts and the air tastes of memory. There, the world feels unfinished, as if time passed once and then changed its mind, leaving behind only the breath of what once was. And in that nowhere, if the clouds clear just so, and the auroras bend low enough, you may glimpse it. An ice temple, sculpted not by hand, but by intention. A structure of such impossible stillness it seems to hover in the frost. No doors, no windows, only walls of translucent blue, carved with lines so delicate they vanish when you look too long. Its shape shifts with the light, One moment a dome, the next a spire, the next a hollowed cave of sky-colored glass. This is the temple of the wordless monks. No one builds it, no one guards it. It appears only to those whose hearts have grown too loud to carry, and it calls not through voice nor vision, but through silence. It is said that within its frozen walls, a single sound has never been spoken. And yet, those who enter leave changed. They forget names, not only of others, but of pain. They forget burdens they did not know they bore. And most of all, they forget the questions they no longer need answered. Once, long ago, a boy named Chilak wandered into that vast white. He was not seeking wisdom. He was not brave. He was simply trying to disappear. He had lost his sister in the thinning ice. A sudden crack, a splash, and then the hush. No scream, only silence, heavy as iron. He blamed himself, though he had done nothing wrong. He carried her name like a wound, whispered it into the snow each night, hoping the wind would carry it someplace warm. But no answer came. So one morning, without telling his mother, he walked into the white, past the last smoke trail of his village, past the frozen whalebones that marked the edge of remembered land, past the cries of birds that no longer returned, and there, in the middle of a stormless calm, he saw it. The temple. It did not glow. It did not beckon. It simply was. As though it had always been, waiting for him. He stepped closer. The snow beneath him did not crunch. The air did not stir. And when he reached out to touch the wall, his fingers did not meet ice. They met memory. 1,000 memories. Not his, not anyone's, but memories older than time. Of stars first blinking awake, of glaciers breathing, of shadows learning to dance. He stepped inside. There were no monks in the way the world knows monks. No robes, no chants. Only figures cloaked in the hush. Bodies still as icicles, faces smooth as bone, eyes closed as if forever listening inward. They moved not with steps, but with presence, gliding across the polished floor like wind over stone. And none of them spoke, not even in thought, because here thought had no weight. Chilak felt it at once. His sorrow began to lift, not vanish, but loosen. Like frost melting from fur, one breath at a time. He wandered. The temple had no walls, not really. Each space opened into another, each chamber filled with light that had never seen the sun. He came upon a pool, still, silver, bottomless. When he leaned over, he saw not his reflection, but moments, his sister's laughter caught in mid-song, his mother's hands braiding his hair by firelight. The first time he saw snow and did not know its name, and then he saw nothing, a blankness, and he wept. He wept not because he had lost, but because he had tried to carry it alone. The monks did not comfort him. They did not speak. But one of them placed a hand on his shoulder, and in that silence he felt held, not fixed, not forgiven, just held. In the center of the temple, there was a single altar, not of ice, but of something else, something that shimmered between states. Atop it sat a tear, frozen in mid-fall, perfect, untouched. It is said that this tear was the sorrow of the first spirit who saw the world break, and that the monks came to this place to remember what could not be said, only felt. Chilak stood before it, and in that moment, he understood. There are wounds that cannot be closed with words. There are answers that cannot be spoken, only held in silence until they no longer bleed. He stayed in the temple for what may have been a day or 100 years. Time did not pass there. It watched. And when he returned, when he stepped once more into the breathing world, he did not speak of what he had seen. He walked back to his village in the pale light of morning. The snow did not remember his footsteps. He found his mother waiting by the river, her eyes rimmed with sleep. She asked where he had been. He only looked at her, and for the first time since his sister fell beneath the ice, he smiled. A small smile, but it stayed. He never told anyone the way back, but others found it. Now and then, someone would vanish into the white, a hunter who could no longer kill, an elder whose mind had forgotten names, a child who cried without knowing why. They would return days later, silent, gentler, changed, and always the snow would carry no trace of where they had gone. The temple of the wordless monks still waits. You cannot seek it. It finds you. When the noise inside grows too loud, when your grief has no shape, when you have forgotten what you are asking for, listen, not with ears, but with silence. And if you feel something beneath your ribs, a hush, a pull, a soft unfurling, step into the white. And you may find a place where sorrow becomes stillness, and stillness becomes song, and song is never sung aloud. Silent transition, but listen. There is yet another name whispered in the wind. Have you ever listened to the sea when it sleeps? Not when it crashes, not when it roars, but when it breathes, slow and deep, like something ancient dreaming beneath its own weight. In those hours when the tide forgets to move and the shore lies wrapped in frost, some say you can hear her still. A song, not sung with lips, but with memory, water, and salt. The seal woman's story is not loud. It is not told often. Because the sea does not shout. It remembers. Long ago, before maps had lines and names, before the land grew hard with sorrow, there was a village along the shore of the frozen ocean. Its people lived not by force, but by rhythm, the rhythm of waves, of wind, of whale song and moon pull. They knew how to read the cracks in sea ice, how to call fish with drums, how to thank the seals whose bodies warmed the fireless dark. But one seal they did not know, not truly. She came ashore on the coldest night of the year. A pale one, with skin like silver fog, eyes darker than ocean caves. They say she stepped from her pelt like a woman waking from a long blue dream. And when she stood, naked beneath the aurora's hush, her song rose like mist from the waves. No one saw her arrive. Only footprints, soft and webbed, marked her path to the cliffs. She left her sealskin hidden in the hollow of a stone, beneath driftwood shaped like a spine. The next morning, a fisherman found her. His name was Nauja. He was young, but already alone. His wife swallowed by childbirth, his nets often empty. When he saw her sitting on the rocks, he thought her a vision. Not quite woman, not quite creature. Her hair dripped with salt. Her eyes watched him like tide-worn stones. He offered her a blanket. She accepted with a nod. But she did not speak. Days passed. She did not leave. And Nauja, spellbound by her silence, asked nothing. He built her a place to sleep. He laid dried fish at her feet. And in time, she stayed. She never told him her name. He called her Anana, meaning of the sea. She became his wife. And from their stillness came a child, a girl with hair like sea kelp, and laughter like water over pebbles. The village whispered. Some feared the seal woman, some adored her, but she never aged. Her eyes remained wide and unblinking. She never sang, never smiled for long, and at night she walked to the shore, alone, always alone. The child grew. She asked questions the mother could not answer. Why don't you speak to the gulls like the others? Why do you sleep with your feet in the water? Why do you cry when the tide is full? One day, the child followed her. She watched as her mother knelt by the stone hollow. She saw her reach for something, a bundle wrapped in kelp and bone. And when Anana unwrapped it, the girl saw a skin, slick, silvery, soft as moonlight on tide. The child gasped. The mother turned, and in that glance, everything changed. Because in the eyes of the girl, the mother saw not judgment, but recognition. A mirror. She carried her daughter back home, held her through the night, and for the first time sang her a lullaby. It was not in words, not in any language of the land. It was the sea, distilled, a song that rose from belly to throat, full of tides, loss, hunger, love. The house filled with salt air. The walls wept. Even the fire dared not crackle. And outside, the ocean stirred. Nauja awoke, heard the song, and understood what he had always refused to see. He followed the sound to the shoreline, heart heavy with knowing. And when he reached the stone hollow, he found it empty. The skin was gone. The woman, gone. Only the girl remained. She stood with her feet in the waves, looking out where the water glowed green beneath the aurora. And beside her, in the surf, a shape, not a seal, not a woman, something between. The creature circled once, then twice, and then vanished beneath the black. The girl said nothing, but when she grew, she too began to sing. And when she sang, the sea answered. It is said that the seal woman returns once every 9 winters. When the sea ices over and the wind forgets its way, she comes in search of her daughter's voice. Those who hear her say it feels like remembering a name you never knew you'd forgotten. A voice without tongue, a language of tide and breath. The village no longer fears her. They leave fish by the cliffs. They hum her lullaby when storms approach. And the girl, now a woman, still walks the shore. She has never left. Because the sea is not a place. It is a voice. And some voices are not meant to stay on land. So if you find yourself by that northern coast, in the hours when the moon hides and even the crabs sleep, listen. And if the water begins to hum, if the ice cracks like knuckles just beneath your feet, do not run. She is not here to take. She is here to remember. And in her remembering, the sea finds its voice once more. Silent transition. And still, the wind carries another tale. Have you ever dreamed beneath a sky so vast that your breath felt like a single thread in an endless tapestry? Have you felt the earth pulse softly beneath your feet, as if the ground itself were breathing, waiting? In the deepest night of the Arctic, where even the stars seem to hold their breath, there is a story told in whispers of a great bear who once ruled the sky and sleeps now beneath the snow. They say the sky bear was no ordinary creature. She was the guardian of the northern lights, the keeper of dreams, and the weaver of stories spun from stardust and shadow. Her fur shimmered with the light of distant suns, and her eyes held the memory of worlds lost to time. Long ago, before the ice had settled on the land, the sky bear danced across the heavens, her mighty paws tracing patterns in the night. She was a bridge between earth and sky, between the seen and unseen. The stars were her children, scattered like seeds along her path. But one winter, the cold came unlike any before. A darkness crept beneath the snow, a silence so deep, it swallowed even the song of the wind. The bear grew tired. Her mighty limbs weakened, and her breath slowed. She found a hollow beneath the tallest mountain, a place where the earth whispered soft lullabies. There, she curled into a ball, her body folding into the shape of a starless sky. And she slept. For centuries, the sky bear has slept beneath the frozen earth. The people who live in the shadow of the mountain tell stories of a child who wandered too close to her resting place. This child was named Aputi, which means white. He was small, with eyes wide as the night, and a heart full of questions. One evening, caught in a blizzard that whispered secrets and threatened to swallow him whole, Aputi stumbled upon the hollow. He found the sky bear curled tight, her fur dusted with snow, her breathing slow but steady. Despite her size, there was a calmness in her presence that made the child feel safe. He sat beside her, watching the rise and fall of her chest, the steady rhythm like the heartbeat of the world itself. In that quiet, Aputi felt stories rise within him, stories of light and dark, of beginnings and endings. He began to hum a melody, soft and ancient, a song passed down through generations but forgotten by many. The sky bear stirred. Her eyes fluttered open, revealing galaxies swirling deep within. She looked at Aputi, and in that gaze, the child understood the language of dreams, a language without words, spoken through silence and presence. The bear lifted her massive paw and gently touched the child's forehead. In that touch, Aputi received a vision. He saw stars falling like tears, the sky unraveling like threads of light, and the earth trembling beneath the weight of forgotten memories. But he also saw hope, a promise that even in the deepest darkness, light could return. When the bear finally rose, she stretched across the sky, and the northern lights flickered to life once more. Colors danced in waves of green, purple, and gold, painting the heavens with stories of old. Aputi returned to his village with a new understanding, carrying the sky bear's song in his heart. He taught the people to listen to the night, to hear the silence between the stars, and to remember that some stories live not in words, but in the quiet breath of the world. They say that if you stand still beneath the northern lights and close your eyes to the cold, you can hear the soft rumble of the sky bear's dreams and feel the gentle touch of her paw upon your soul. But beware, for disturbing the bear's sleep could awaken a storm fierce enough to shatter the sky. So listen closely, traveler. Feel the pulse beneath your feet, and honor the sleep of the sky bear, guardian of the starless night. Silent transition. But there is still one final whisper in the cold. Have you ever heard a song carried not by wind or voice but by silence itself? A melody that seeps beneath your skin, weaving through the shadows of memory, whispering secrets older than mountains and colder than the deepest ice. In the hidden places beneath the Arctic's endless white, there is a tale of a flute, made not from wood, but from bone. A bone flute that sings the story of the forgotten one. They say the forgotten one was once a man, though who he was and what he sought has been swallowed by time's deep hunger. He lived beyond the reach of firelight, in a village where words were few and the night was long. He was a keeper of stories, but his own was lost. A shadow without a name, a breath without a body. One winter, when the northern winds howled like ancient wolves, the forgotten one crafted a flute from the femur of a great caribou. Its surface was smooth as ice-polished glass, etched with symbols that shimmered faintly in the moonlight. He played the flute not to summon joy or sorrow, but to call forth the unseen, the spirits of the earth, the whispers of the stars, the echoes of what had never been spoken. The music that rose from the bone was unlike anything heard before. It was a voice made of silence and longing, of absence and presence intertwined. The wind carried the notes across the frozen tundra, and creatures of shadow and light paused to listen. But the song was not meant for mortal ears. Those who heard it found themselves caught between worlds, their thoughts unraveling like threads of frost, their memories folding in on themselves, and their dreams filled with faces they could no longer name. The forgotten one played on, lost within the music's deepening spiral. He wandered through frozen forests and silent valleys, his flute weaving the cold night into a tapestry of sound and shadow. And one day, the music stopped. The flute slipped from his hands and shattered on the ice, sending shards sparkling like fallen stars across the snow. He vanished soon after. Some say he crossed the veil between life and death, drawn by the song's final note. Others believe he remains, somewhere beneath the ice, his breath still weaving melodies through the bone flute's scattered pieces. The village that once knew him holds a quiet vigil each year, gathering by the frozen river to listen for the flute's faint song carried on the wind. They say that when the night is stillest and the stars are hidden beneath a veil of clouds, the bone flute sings again, a melody of loss, of forgotten names, and the eternal search for meaning in the endless white. If you find yourself by that silent river and hear a haunting tune weaving through the cold, do not seek the player. Listen only. For in the song of the bone flute, the Arctic speaks its deepest truths, and the forgotten one calls us home. Silent transition. And so the circle of stories closes as the night holds its breath.